Good morning, everybody. I wanted to take a minute to go over the lab simulation that I gave you guys yesterday. So we're going to take a look at it, and I want to show you a couple things while it's loading there. There it is. We're talking about gravity. Gravity is a non-contact force. That means that it acts on you without actually touching you in any particular way. And we know this because I'm sitting in a chair right now. I'm not going anywhere. The reason that that's happening is because gravity is holding me to the chair. It's pulling on me. And the thing that is creating the gravity is the Earth. The Earth has such a large mass compared to me that it acts on me and keeps me in place because of gravity. Another example here, obviously, if I have this pen and I let go of it, boom, falls into my hand. These are concepts you've known since who knows when, maybe even before school started for you. But the new information that we're going to learn about gravity is that it can be influenced by two different forces or two different factors. And those factors are illustrated in this simulation really well. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to set the simulation up so that these objects are as far away from each other as possible. A couple of things about the simulation. You've got the objects with mass, and you have the distance between those two objects. And what you'll notice here at the top of each object is a small arrow, depending on the amount of gravity. And that's exactly what that arrow represents, is how much gravity is there between these two objects, because science has taught us that there is a gravitational attraction between any two objects in the universe, not just on our planet, in the universe. And so there's a couple of factors here, and I'm going to reset this to put the mass at the bare minimum. So when I put the mass at 10 kgs for both objects, what do you notice happened to the arrow on both sides? It completely disappears. The reason that it's gone is because gravity is so small at this point, because the objects are so far apart and they're so small. There is gravity between them, but it's so small that it's not even represented with an arrow here. Now I'm going to take the mass of this first object, going to make it grow, and you see that the gravitational force begins to show up. So the arrow is just barely there. Now I'm going to take the mass of my second object, I'm going to make it grow, and now you notice that arrow starts to really show up, which means there's more gravitational force between those objects. The larger that they are, the stronger the force is going to be. So let's do this. I'm going to take my mass 1 and bring it back down to 10. And we've got a small arrow, which means there's less force. So even though I have a large object over here, because there's a small object here, the force between the two is small. And I'm going to show you here, as that object gets closer and closer and closer, the arrow starts to grow. As it gets closer and closer, the arrow grows even a little bit more. Now, I'm going to ask you, what do you think is going to happen when I increase the mass of object 1? If I increase the mass, that should increase the force of gravity, and that's exactly what we see. The force of gravity is the arrow has grown off the screen. So there you go. What's going to happen to the amount of gravity? Let's bring these things back together here. What will happen to the force represented by the arrow here if I take the mass of object 2 and bring it down? It should go away, and that's what you see here. Yep, but I can bring the objects closer together. Arrow starts to grow a little bit. If I bring the mass of object 2 back up to 1,000, what's going to happen to the force? It's going to increase. If I bring the mass of object 1 up to 1,000, what's going to happen to the force? Increases. There you go. So the first concept that you need to understand is the mass changes the force of gravity. The more mass you have, the more gravity you have. The second thing that you've got to understand is distance influences gravity. The more distance I have, the less force I have. Hopefully this is helpful for you to understand these two concepts. Feel free to play around with it, and we'll talk more about it tomorrow. Thanks.